My name's Brad Robertson. I run a company in Mallorca called Ondine. It's an adventure and leisure company, and I run it with my wife Bea. Marine conservation has been something that I've been very interested in for a long time, obviously being a dive instructor with history working on the dive boats in Australia in Cairns. The attitude of local people towards marine conservation here in Mallorca has been overwhelmingly positive, but there's not a lot of people doing it. So therefore the doors that have opened, the people that I've met, people in the Department of Fisheries here, people in businesses that I wouldn't have normally met without the conservation projects is a wonderful thing. Sacrifices I've had to make to begin conservation projects here in Mallorca. Time would be a big sacrifice. Basically any time that I'm not working with the business, I'm working on conservation projects, which in turn affects my personal life with my wife. Which can get pretty tough. It puts a lot of pressure, there's a lot of stress involved, there's not a lot of help. Financially, it's been an absolute nightmare financially. So there's a whole array of things that make it difficult. The Stingray survey. All right, well, about 18 months ago I found out that there was a population, a rather dense population of stingrays that frequent the Bay of Palma. Last year we went out for a couple of dives in a location not far from Palma Airport actually, and discovered that the stories of stingrays was true. And over the past 12 months I've been putting together a monitoring program. Obviously if we're going to think about protecting the stingrays that are here in Mallorca that are left, we need to understand what they're doing here first. We need to understand the environment that they're living in, and then once we've put together the program and we've done the survey for 12 months, and then maybe these whole environments can be protected. On the last few dives I've been out almost every day for the last couple of weeks diving with the rays. And on almost every dive we see stingrays with their tails cut off, still swimming around, which indicates that they've been caught by a fishing boat, tails lopped off and then thrown back in the water. The whole purpose of the stingray survey is to understand the population that frequents Mallorca over about a 1 to 3 month period. So what we're trying to do is get a group of volunteers together, working with the Department of Fisheries and local scientists, also working with an organisation called Joves Navegants. So it's a science-based program to study these fish, but with Joves Navegants involved, it's involving youth of the island. So we're trying to combine the two. We're trying to combine a scientific program with a community-based program, which will all lead on to a conservation program.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, somebody has to take care of them.
I know some, but nowhere near as many as we've seen today.
It's really nice to get out, have a dive and check out the sea life, but it's also really nice to actually be part of this project.
Why do I do conservation projects? Because I'm a diver. Because I'm a diver that loves to observe, interact with marine creatures, and there's not so many of them in the Mediterranean. And it would be really nice to see over the next 5, 10, 15 years a complete reversal on what's been happening in the Med, to species, whole environments recuperating, rejuvenating, regrowing, repopulating, and being able to take my clients, my divers, my friends, my dad for a dive in the Med, and they come out going, wow, that was cool, you know.
Esta zona de aquí es una de las que, a través de distintos programas de investigación, sabíamos que hay abundancia de rayas en esta época del año. Probablemente esté asociado a un comportamiento reproductivo. Vienen tanto a aparearse como a parir las hembras. y en esta época del año pues es cuando más abundancia hay de esta especie de la pastinaca.
We turned up to El Delta to do what's become the normal routine of taking people for a dive with the stingrays here in Mallorca. And the first thing we came across were three guys with spear guns. As I sort of asked them what they'd caught, they said they'd caught a couple of rays, and they were just bringing them up. So we waited till they brought the rays up, and they brought up two females. One was, I would say, 80 to 90 centimetres wide. The other one a little bit smaller, but both looked to be pregnant. And then they put them in the car and took them away. Seeing those rays dead, belly up, pregnant, tails chopped off, actually made me feel physically ill. The chances are that they've shot it, and then the mother, trying to look after the young, give them the most chance to live, has given birth on the spot. The other thing was that we didn't actually see any stingrays on the dives. I've got not a thing against a human being going into the water, spearing a fish, taking it home, cooking it on the barbie, enjoying it with their friends, enjoying a few beers. But to see that happen in a marine reserve defeats the whole purpose of a marine reserve. Obviously, with Spain being in such an economic crisis, in a financial hole, so to speak, obviously the government are cutting different aspects of their expenditure. So for them to cut the policing of the marine reserves means that those marine reserves are marine reserves on paper, but unfortunately are not marine reserves in reality.
He was saying that we take picture of the car, and the same Spanish, then they were a little bit, how do you say it? Angry?
Why do I think it's so hard to put this project to get the funding? Well, I think one of the reasons why it's so hard for people like myself, the little guy, to do anything to get funding for these projects is just because of that, because I'm an unknown entity. The company that I own is very young. I'm definitely not a movie star. I don't mix with wealthy people and glamorous circles that would be able to fund these projects.
How do you finance the project?
At the moment, I've been financing the projects. We saw what could be quite possibly the biggest stingrays I've ever seen, within 5 or 10 metres of each other.
Brad, can we have a look at this?
What's this, mate?
Some footage from last night. Big ray. How big is that?
It was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you saw these things somewhere else in the world, you'd be absolutely mind blown. But seeing these things in Mallorca is just completely out of this world. We had a phenomenal night dive prior to seeing these two massive rays. We saw loads and loads of marine life. We saw octopus, we saw cuttlefish, we saw little tiny baby cuttlefish that were about this big. We saw nudibranchs, we saw smaller rays. Everyone was having a wonderful dive. It was quite a long dive, and then on the way back to our exit point, I came across a very large rough-tail ray. Dave followed me and shone his light on the ray, which he thought was a rock, until he realised it was a rather large rough-tailed stingray sitting in the sand. It was quite a sight. We lost that ray. It took off, and all of us were running relatively low on air, so most of us headed to the surface. Then when David and and Clive said that the big ray was still underneath them. We swam back over on the surface, had a look down, shone my torch on what I thought was the same ray, and then noticed that this rather large specimen, and it was pushing 2 metres across, the width of 2 metres. It had no tail. Its tail had been lopped off. It had a stump which was as thick as a thigh. I dropped back down again and had a little bit of a swim around, a close encounter with a rather large rough-tailed stingray. Fantastic. The single biggest thing that'll get the Majorca Stingray Survey up and running is funding. We need the funding for the operations, we need the funding to get things moving. And the reality is that the amount of money we're looking for is, in the whole scheme of things, not a lot of money. I think for me, the coolest thing about filming this short film is to get the message out there. When you think about how long one human being's on this earth for and how long humanity's been on this earth for, you'd like to think that that with all the intelligence that we apparently have, that we'd be thinking a little bit beyond ourselves and actually looking after this place, i.e. the world, a lot better than we have been.